Hey everybody, Nick here, and in this video I'm going to show you how I organize my day at $70,000 per month. Let's get into it. So my net profit for the last 3 months, if you just take the average, is about $70,000 a month. It's actually closer to 80 now because I wrote this about a week and a half ago, but that's all right. This money comes from 4 or 5 different places. It comes from my community, which is like my make.com group where I coach people collectively through this group coaching model, and then help them achieve, 10, 15, 20, 25K a month. It comes from automation services where I run an automation company and I provide automation services mostly on retainer and subscription at this point because I find that the highest leverage. It comes from my content writing company called 1 Second Copy, which is still operational, still chugging, and still paying out the owners a fair dividend at the end of every month. Then it comes from just my ad revenues, my affiliates. This is a smaller part of the pie, so I'm just going to group it all together, but stuff like YouTube ads, stuff like affiliates for Fantabuster signups, Smart Lead signups, that sort of thing. So the reason why I'm making this video is because back in the day when I wasn't really making enough money to barely live on, let alone, afford some nicer conveniences and stuff like that, one of my favorite things to do was to go on YouTube and to search up entrepreneur schedule, how guys that make 100K a month spend their time and spend their day. And the reason I really like to do it is because it was usually quite different. You'll find that people have a very diverse array of schedules, and what works for some people might not work for others. So some people were night owls. Some other people were, they woke up at 4 a.m., grinded for the first 7 hours, and then spent the afternoon with their family or something. And it was so diverse, but what I realized is somewhere in that diversity, there were always parallels. And I realized that, people that make money, because capitalism is a game, right? We're here just playing a game that we were sort of forced to play the second we came out of the womb. In order to win this game, there's certain things that basically everybody who's even mildly successful at it does. And seeing those things in real time and just seeing how they broke down from the big array of schedules on YouTube was one of the most interesting things to me in it. And I love learning about it. And since then, many people have asked me the same thing. So I thought that I'd record a video doing so. Not to be presumptuous, not because I really care too much, but because I think it's actually going to be providing you guys some value. So I always do this disclaimer, but everybody's different. This is just my process, this is my schedule, this is what works for me. It's not the only way to get to 70K a month. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people that make 200, 300, 400K a month that I know personally that work very, very differently to me and probably work a lot less. So take whatever makes sense to you guys out of this video and then discard whatever is irrelevant. No gatekeeping here. I'll show you everything. I would have recorded my full day with a 24-hour vlog type thing. I thought that would have been really interesting. But then I realized that my day is actually just me in front of the computer. So there's probably no better way of recording my day than just what I'm doing now. All right, so the very first thing I want to get into just before I actually break down my schedule is some concepts that I've learned over the course of the last few years, especially as my career went from, I used to be making 2 or 3K a month for most of my entrepreneurial career, up to where it is now. And the first is that what you work on is a lot more important than how much you work. Basically, in automation specifically, there's a big misunderstanding between efficiency and effectiveness. Everybody wants to be efficient, but not a lot of people think hard about what that means. Efficiency is basically just the amount of time and energy it takes you to do one task. And so if you're efficient, you minimize the amount of time and you minimize the amount of energy to do that one task. But to be honest, efficiency doesn't really matter. When I was making only a few $1,000s per month, and that was my net profit, and I was eating, instant ramen soup bowls, I was extraordinarily efficient. Every time a task would come to me, I would crush it. But I was not very effective because the tasks that I was working on in the first place were not the tasks that were going to drive my life forward or give me a high ROI. So this is the number one thing that if I could go back in time to when I was door knocking, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, this is the number one thing that I wish I could teleport back in time and tell myself. It would save me years of my life, probably quite a few gray hairs. I used to work door to door where I would go business to business for about 8 hours a day. And I'd look for about 80 prospects or so per day. And I did some of this on my own. I had a business partner when the going was tough. You needed somebody to kick you in the ass to keep pushing. And essentially, in order to get 80 prospects, it required me 8 hours. So mathematically, the reason I'm saying this is because it was about 10 prospects an hour that were hearing my pitch, right? Nowadays, I do 1 hour of button clicks, whether it's a cold email campaign or it's community stuff or whether it's my inbound marketing now through YouTube, and I reach several thousand. So the difference there, 8 prospects versus 1,000, and the amount of effort that I put in is completely extraordinarily different. I was a very efficient door knocker, But that doesn't mean that that was the right thing to do. It wasn't very effective to begin with. So yeah, if I could combine my work ethic back then, and I'll say that my work ethic back then might even be higher than it is now, or better than it is now, with effectiveness and focusing on the right things from the get-go, I'd be so much further ahead. So while you do need to work really, really hard in order to be successful, don't let me mistake you. And I think that in order for me to continue growing in my financial success and in my renown on YouTube, I need to continue working harder and harder and harder, not less and less and less. If I were you, I would spend a few moments considering how best to utilize your time. And, I have a little hint down here. It's usually customers. Another concept I want to get into is this concept of willpower versus environment design. So, we talk a lot about procrastination when we talk about schedules and stuff like that. Like, I should have gotten X, Y, and Z done, but I was so busy procrastinating. I was just like, I watched YouTube or anime for 3 hours, or I played some video games, or hung out with my boyfriend or something like that, right? Most people will spend their whole day fighting temptation. They always have some nagging thing at the back of their mind that's like pulling them in a million different directions. For example, right now my phone is in my left pocket, and I know for a fact that I probably have 15 notifications right there. And so in a way, a small portion of my brain power is being dedicated to suppressing the desire to pick up my phone. And I really should have put this in another room because it totally illustrates what I'm about to talk about. But what I've come to realize is this is very ineffective. And this is the definition of something like one of those ineffective behaviors that you shouldn't be doing. Because every single time you summon some of your willpower, you are draining your effort and your total output capacity. As much as people like to pretend that willpower is unlimited, it is not. We only really have a certain amount of it every day. And if you push through more and more, there's some adverse effects on things like your health and your longevity, your well-being, your cognition. Modern civilization makes this phenomenon that used to be present, but not a big deal, like a million trillion times worse, because now now it's a cell phone here. It's like 300 email notifications there. It's the TikTok and Instagram and brain rot, dopamine, phones, drugs, drinks. I mean, literally all of these industries have been built up, and they're very mature industries now with teams of psychologists whose whole job it is to try and distract you. So if you try just with your little feeble human brain, which evolved, 50, 100, 150,000 years ago, the science is still out, to try and, fight against this modern industry, it's like fighting with sticks and stones against freaking intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's a complete and utter waste of your time. You should not be doing it. Even the most stoic person, the person with the most willpower, will inevitably give in. It's simply impossible not to. So you don't have to do this is probably the big realization that I want to talk about, and also the big realization that changed me. You don't have to live in an environment that somebody else, like these companies, design for you. You can actually live in an environment that you design for yourself, and you can design the lifestyle that you want as long as you're very conscious about it. And if you spend a few moments designing that lifestyle, you can sidestep the willpower problem entirely and substantially improve your effectiveness, your work ethic, essentially, by proxy, and ultimately your success. You can structure your day so that there's basically nothing else you can do except to work on those high priority, high ROI tasks. So that's what I do. I like to build my environment in a way that means that I never have to expend willpower, that it minimizes the friction, that allows me to, it's almost like I'm on a slide, right? Every day when I wake up in the morning, I just go down a slide, and my very first stop is stuff that makes me money. And I sort of have to do it because it's just the simplest, most straightforward, easiest, most logical next step for me. The last thing I'm going to mention is I'm a dumb monkey. I acknowledge this. Treating yourself as a dumb monkey makes it as easy as possible to do the high ROI stuff I talked about earlier without giving in. My guiding philosophy is not, I will do this today, even if it's hard. It's, how can I set up my environment and how can I set up my lifestyle in a way that I can continue doing this every day for the next 5 years? And this is a very different question, and it can be pretty dang difficult to commit to. But when you do it, your life gets a lot easier. A good example is I just moved apartments. And the reason why I moved apartments is because there was some construction occurring next door. And I looked at my schedule and I realized that construction was going to be occurring for the next 6 months or so. There's some balcony project basically in the condo next door to me. Now I bought my apartment, so it's not as easy as me just packing up and leaving. But that's exactly what I did. I looked at the math behind how much money I was making, and then how much money like the friction that this would add to my life, knowing that there's some construction in the background preventing me from doing my daily recording at the time that I want to do. And I said, oh, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to move to a place where I can do this uninterrupted and quiet. And so I found an apartment within 2 days and I packed my shit up and then I moved. And that's why, the background's a little bit different if you've been following me for quite a while. I changed my environment because I didn't want to have to deal with the constant willpower of being like, oh shit, dang, that construction, the jackhammer, and I got to re-record my videos or whatever. For me, it was worth the time, energy, and the money. It was a logical decision that made me more effective, right? Another example is, I don't know, maybe you want to take vitamins more. Well, if you want to take vitamins more, construct your lifestyle and your environment in such a way that it's very low friction. Put your vitamins first place you see when you wake up. The second you get up, the very first place your eyes go to, make a note of it. And then put your vitamins there. Put a big, chill, nice glass of water with a bunch of ice in it. So literally the first thing that you want to do when you get up is, oh my God, that looks great. You reach over, you pop your vitamins, and then done. You're going to do that every morning. Do you want to work more? Make your workstation or the place that you are spending your time working more attractive, more appealing, more comfortable. If you find yourself constantly wanting to get up and go for a walk or something, buy yourself a freaking walk and treadmill, right? Those are pretty big. Find a way to put your workstation in a place that gives you more things to look at, more scenery, whatever stimulates that need that wanted to make you leave in the first place. Do you want to exercise more? Well, minimize the friction between you and the gym. Either move somewhere where you have a gym in your building, get a home gym, right? If you live far enough that you can't walk, minimize the driving friction. Call a friend that's going to the gym and have them pick you up on their way every morning. I mean, I guarantee you, if somebody's downstairs waiting for you with the car running, you're not going to say, oh, maybe I should skip the gym today. These are all real examples from my life, which is why I'm telling you them. I used to really struggle with getting out of bed in the morning. And so let's actually dive into the first part of my schedule. I used to really struggle with getting out of bed in the morning. I used to spend half an hour, 45 minutes rolling around. And most of the time I'd just be staring at the ceiling, or I'd be thinking about the various goings on earlier, the previous day. And that's okay. I think you should have time that you're bored where you're just thinking. But I know that for me, it wasn't just about rolling around and like enjoying, it wasn't just about like planning my day. It wasn't just about thinking. It wasn't about meditating. I was just wasting my time. So my little hack now, which is super controversial, and tons of people are like, you should never be doing this. Even some members in my community, a bunch of my close friends, my parents for sure, is I just put my laptop right next to my bed. When I wake up, the first thing I will do is I'll just roll over and then work on the first thing on my to-do list. And it's just so much easier that way. Because if you think about it, my computer is way more engaging than staring at the ceiling. If the only effort I have to expend is, and then, pick up my laptop and open it, that's basically no effort at all. My brain is willing to do that every morning. And then since I'm usually groggy in the mornings and waking up takes me around 45 minutes anyway, before I'm at like peak cognitive capacity, I basically reclaim my whole 45 minutes. And that in that way, I get to add time that is wasted or sunk or dead for most other people. And then I get to work. The reason why I think this is silly, or the reason why I think so many people think this is silly, is because by you staring at a screen first thing in the morning or whatever, it's like constructing your day in an unhealthy way. But I think about, my health not necessarily as, it's not that I don't think of my health as important. I do. I think my health is really important. But I think about my goal, and my goal right now is growing my business. So if my goal is growing my business, in order to be as effective as possible, why shouldn't I spend all my time doing it? Or shouldn't I structure my day in a way that allows me to spend more time doing it? This is the first thing that I do every morning because it's the most important thing that I have to do every morning. A lot of people try and meditate and they take cold showers and they do tons of these very healthy things that I think are great holistically for their life, but don't really drive ROI in the place that they probably want to see the most success, which is their business. So I can just do all that shit later, when I'm not just rolling around in bed wasting my time. I can bang out the highest ROI part of my day first, and then I can meditate. I can take my cold showers. And that's sort of how I structure my day. I focus on the high ROI stuff that drives revenue because that's what's the most important to me. So being clear on what's most important to you is obviously a prerequisite for this. Do some thinking if you have to, but that's just a little example of how I do things. Also, I know I said I was going to talk about a schedule, and here I say no schedules. I just mean I don't really have like defined start and end times to the various tasks in my day. A lot of people have like defined, I take lunch every afternoon at 12, for instance. I don't have that. My day is still a little bit more flexible, and I find that flexibility is really important because I do have some days where I deviate in terms of my cognitive output, some days where I don't sleep too well or whatever. I want to be able to I want to give myself a little bit of slack and a little bit of buffer room. So my natural rhythm is good to me, so I just listen to my natural rhythm. And the reason why I can't really have a schedule is because I just don't use an alarm. I just wake up around the same 30-minute intervals or so, which is about 6 a.m. And then I get light first thing. This guy called Andrew Huberman, if you guys are familiar, talks a lot about the benefits of light first thing in the morning. And that's another reason why I moved. I wasn't really getting a lot of light early in the morning, and I structured my day and my lifestyle in a way now where like the first thing I do is I just sit right here. I have these huge floor-to-ceiling windows where light just pours in, which is quite nice. All right, let's actually talk about my average day. So this is a screenshot from a time tracking platform that I usually recommend called Rise. If you guys are unfamiliar with Rise, it's basically the most invasive privacy killing tool on planet Earth. It constantly tracks literally everything you do on your computer all day long. And I love it. I use it all the time. What I use it for is so that at the end of the day, when I go, man, I did a lot of work today, I can actually open up my thing and it can confirm whether or not I actually did a lot of work that day or spent a lot of time on work. Because what I was finding is a lot of the time that I thought I was doing work, I was really just spending it on mindless, silly bullshit that didn't add to my bottom line, like meetings for the most part, or I took very long breaks and I didn't really consider them breaks or that sort of thing. So I have an affiliate code below if you guys want to sign up. I'm not pushing you to. I just really like their platform. There's probably 4 or 5 other ones that do something quite similar. Rise to me is just the most consistent because they also have a little coach now where if it finds you on social media or something, they'll just say, hey, man, like, are you sure you want to be on social media right now? You said that you wanted to work today. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Click. It's just like a passive lifestyle thing that slowly guides your behavior back to where you want it to be and sort of fights against your inbuilt human nature to just procrastinate and be lazy and whatnot. So yeah, my actual schedule looks like this basically every day and look like this today. I'm currently at deep work in the mid-morning, hours 2 to 3. But I wake up and then I'll work in the early morning immediately. I'll just roll over, grab my laptop, open it, start chugging away. I have a little to-do list that I set up the day before. That to-do list just contains 2 or 3 high priority tasks that I want to do that day. And then after I do my first hour, I'll just have a little coffee break. I don't actually drink coffee anymore, but it's usually some type of warm morning beverage like tea or something. I'm drinking a chai these days, which is quite nice. Then I have some deep work in the mid-morning. Deep work, for those of you that are unfamiliar, is just where you have no distractions. It's just where you cut out you cut out your phone, you cut out all the notifications that you're getting, and you just focus on tackling this big thing that you have to do in the day. This is really the measure of how productive you are. If you can focus on deep work tasks for a prolonged period of time, you're going to do quite well in today's very busy, distraction-filled day. The reason why I do this for so long is because I worked up to it. The very first few times that I tried doing deep work, I could only really focus for 20 or 30 minutes at a time before something would inevitably distract me or I'd get derailed or defocused. But the more that you do deep work, it's almost like a muscle, right? You get better at focusing and attending to things while inhibiting all the rest of the BS that isn't super important. So yeah, I do that for 2 hours, and then I will usually have a little breakfast shake. The reason why I have a breakfast shake is I just don't really want to go through the rigmarole of calling somebody to either deliver me food, making food on my own. I don't want to have to deal with meal prepping the day before. So I just have a little breakfast shake, which takes me less than 3 minutes to whip up, and then it allows me to get back to doing work immediately afterwards, which is quite nice. I'll then do deep work in the late morning. So this is right before the afternoon, hours 4 to 5. And then by that time, the vast majority of my work is done. As you see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish hours, and that's completed. 3 hours is now completed. I'll then, knowing that I have to sort of take a break, and my mind's kind of winding down anyway, I'll go to the gym. After I get back from the gym, I'll have a huge fat lunch, and this is what provides me the majority of my calories for the day, honestly. And then I will do some deep work in the mid-afternoon, hours 6 to 7. After I do that hour 6 to 7 deep work block, I'm done. I don't really focus too much on work after then because I don't structure my day in a way where it's like work is off, work is on. If something comes up later on in the day that I want to attend to, that I'm interested in, if I have some really interesting comment on my community or something, I will go on and I will answer it, but just because I want to, not because I have to. The only work that I quote unquote have to, the stuff that's high ROI and drives my day forward, are those deep work blocks. And I don't always get this, right? I don't always finish all of these deep work blocks, but I do most of the time, and I don't beat myself up if I don't. I just say, all right, well, I'll do it tomorrow, better luck tomorrow. If I couldn't do it today, it's like, all right, you know what? I need to start doing this a little better, but I'm gonna work on it tomorrow. And in that way, I don't really feel super guilty. I don't really beat myself up over not being able to achieve some sort of time goal. Because again, while the time is a good proxy for the amount of output that you have, time isn't the actual output, right? It's the output that matters. Some days I'm a lot more productive than others simply because I do harder, more high ROI, more effective tasks. And that's fine. Now, in terms of what I actually work on, this is a point of, I think, a lot of controversy because some people consider some tasks effective. Other people consider other tasks effective. I'm almost blessed because I'm in the automation industry where I realize how much of the work that most people do on a day-to-day basis is automatable. And so as a result, I've been sort of forced to, by my own work life, focus on things that are not very automatable. So my deep work sessions will consist of the following 3 things. The first, honestly, is just brainstorming. I spend an inordinate amount of time brainstorming, at least an hour, hour and a half every day. This is literally me just sitting on my chair and just thinking. I'm just thinking, is what I'm doing right now right? Is there some way that I could be doing what I'm doing now better? What sorts of tasks am I doing right now that I could take off my plate? What I usually do is I'll take my current revenue and I'll break it down into buckets. So service lines, clients, businesses. So, exactly what I did at the very beginning of this video where it said community revenue, automation agency revenue, that sort of thing. I make a big spreadsheet. I make this like once or twice a week, honestly. And then using that breakdown, I'll look at the things that are driving me the most money. And then I'll think, what, this thing's driving me the most money. What do I think the potential is that this could drive more, right? Or less? Or how risky is this? Or how much time and energy would I need to make double this, right? And then I'll just do a bunch of brainstorming to see what I think the shortest line paths are to doubling my revenue for each of these service lines, clients, or businesses. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm identifying the largest contributors, and then I'm identifying the bottlenecks in each contributor. I'm identifying, hey, what's stopping me from moving forward? And then I'm eliminating those bottlenecks, or I'm thinking about how to eliminate those bottlenecks. Once I have sort of a grandiose top-level plan, I should do this, right? I think about how to convert my action item into just a bunch of sub-goals, which are a lot more straightforward to tackle. Then I figure out how to work on or delegate those sub-goals effectively, and then I just rinse and repeat this process. And then voila, I usually have a big to-do list with just 30 things that I need to do, which will allow me to achieve the highest ROI that day, and then that week, and then that month. Another deep work session item is videos or community material. So that's what I'm doing right now. This is in the middle of one of my deep work sessions. What I'll do is I'll write, record, or I'll at least ideate one video or asset per day. I was unfortunately unable to do that last week, which is what really kind of annoyed me and got me down. But now that I'm living in a new place, I don't have that friction sort of at the back of my mind. It's a lot easier to do so. It's my highest leverage action at the moment, so I do make a ton of time for it. And you can think of this as stuff like YouTube videos, videos then posted into my community, whimsical charts. I'm starting to make lead magnets now, so I'm doing some of that. Gamma slideshows, just like this one, that sort of deal. The last thing that I do in my deep work sessions is I do client management. So I have a fair number of automation and clients for 1 second copy. This requires some management every day. I don't necessarily have to do this, but I do this because I think it's a big lever that drives forward my short-term revenue. And I think that short-term revenue, while not the most important thing, is still quite important. So this is like client systems, which is super high leverage work. I usually spend an hour or two doing it and I can make several $1,000s. I'll do development. I'll do delivery videos. This is just like recording videos, just like I'm doing now. Just I'm going over my projects and I'm explaining documentation-wise how to do the project for the client. Now yours will obviously differ. I already have revenue, so I'm focused on scaling it. If you are watching this video and you don't have revenue, your focus isn't on scaling it, your focus is on bridging the gap from 0 to 1. So your day-to-day is most definitely going to look different. In fact, if I could give you a recommendation, if you're watching this video and you don't have maybe more than $3,000 or $4,000 a month under your belt, it would be to eliminate everything else except for customer acquisition and just focus on customer acquisition with all of your time every day. It's uncomfortable, it's annoying, but that's exactly how you're going to get your first few customers. And the second that you have revenue, it's a very, very different conversation to have to scale it. Getting it for the first time, completely different problem than growing it, I would say. And personally, I think growing it is a lot easier. So I'm always encouraging people that don't have too much of this entrepreneurial revenue, too much of this free, internet money that's coming into their bank account every month, to focus on acquiring customers first and foremost. Now, my non-deep work sessions, this is just stuff where, if a little task crops up during the day or a first hour of the morning, I'll deal with it. Usually consist of 3 things: calls, YouTube comments, community comments, and then administrative work like emails and that sort of thing. So I don't really need to be in deep work mode to do a call. A call to me is just a conversation most of the time. It takes a little bit of additional work if it's like a sales call or something like that, but it's not so much that it actually, I would constitute that as deep work. I constitute it as high leverage if I don't have money, but at this point, I have a little bit of money. I don't necessarily need to sell as much as it's just a nice to have sort of thing. But a lot of these calls are also very friendly. They're just very enjoyable. I almost treat them as breaks from the rest of my day. YouTube comments and community, these are both very high leverage, but they're less directed work than when I'm deep into a brainstorming session. I don't necessarily need to be on to them. It's just a leisure activity I can have while I'm eating some popcorn or some shit. So I do this during non-deep work sessions. And then these administrative tasks, these emails, that sort of thing, these are high urgency, low importance. That just means that they need to be dealt with now, but they're not very important. So I like to do them at the end of my day, or I like to just like backload them to the end of my my first work hour session in the morning. Simply because there's some things that just need to be done. Some client will ask you for a refund or something, and it's like, well, I need to do this, even though it takes me 5 minutes. I just have to do it now because, I have to give them a refund. Or somebody will send you an email saying, hey, this account is locked because you haven't updated your password or whatever. It's like, shit, well, I have to unlock that account, right? You could, of course, get an assistant to do all this stuff for you. I just don't really think that that's super necessary for me as of yet. And this doesn't really take me too much time, so I don't really worry about it. In terms of my average week, my average workly output, Rise tracks all of my time. It monitors my activity in the background 24/7, and then it categorizes these tasks based on predefined bins. Stuff like productivity, stuff like entertainment, stuff like business, coding. I think I even created a category called no code. I don't know if I actually did for this one. Yeah, I don't know if I have that no code category, but anyway, you can make your own categories as well. And what I've realized is my average work week is about 60 hours of work. 60 hours, not all of that is deep work. I spend maybe about 25 to 30 hours a week in deep work. I work disproportionately the longest on Wednesdays, usually because I have a weekly call for my community, and then I have to do just a little bit of an admin work, managing the community therein. On top of all the rest of the work that I have, I also have a couple of client meetings on Wednesdays that usually add a few hours. I take usually, and this isn't because I force myself to, or I have some structure, but what I've found is after doing this for a few months, I take half of my Sunday off usually. And then, a lot of people will look at this and then they'll say, 60, 70 hours a week, like, aren't you worried about burning out? I think a lot of the burnout problem is really just mental. I don't burn out because I make my work really enjoyable. On a nice day, I'll work from my balcony. I will play pleasant music in the background. I will call friends during mindless administrative tasks to catch up. I basically don't really see it as like work as much as I see it just like something that I'm doing today. I think the problem is when you start focusing on it and being like, I'm working so much, and then it just like starts becoming this feedback loop in your head. And I could be mistaken. Who knows? Maybe I'll be burnt out in the freaking ER in a couple of months. But I feel fantastic, and I personally don't think that it's an issue for me. It's not an issue for a lot of the people that I know that are making a ton of money because we just don't really conceptualize it like that. It's all about just considering what you're doing play as opposed to work. And it really is play. I mean, this is super enjoyable to me because this is still relatively new in my business career. Recording, I get to record from different places. I get to like do, learn how to edit stuff. I get to learn how to best present my material. All this stuff is just like daily improvements that I really, really grow addicted to. And on that note, there's a book that I think most people here should read. And it was recommended to me by one of my best friends just about a few months ago, honestly. It's called The Infinite Game, or it's called Finite and Infinite Games by James P. Carse. And then there's a more modern version created by Simon Sinek, who just took the concept and then sort of wrapped it in a more modern way of looking at it. But the original is fantastic. I read the original, and it was a great book. I never really thought of the business work that I did growing up as work. Like, I mean, I'm calling it work now, but they have different connotations. It's just the work. It's like the practice of working. Right? It's just like the thing that I'm doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's hard work. It's work, it's like I'm really pushing through it every day. If you think about it, it is my business. I conjured up my business out of the ether like a fucking wizard. That's incredible. People pay me for it, and I receive money through tiny little wires. Like, is that really like hard work, or is that like amazement? It's like, I literally feel like a Dungeons and Dragons character sometimes. It's crazy. I do think that 9 to 5s a lot of the time can be work and can be very hard work. Not necessarily hard because you're pushing the lever or you're moving the needle, but hard because you're playing by somebody else's rules. You're a slave to their decisions. When they screw up, it becomes your fault inevitably. But if it's your own business, I think the only way you can really describe what you're doing is sort of play, right? It's like a game. It's just something that you're getting better at every day. And even if you don't see the successes that you're looking for immediately, if you just play this game long enough, if you make this game infinite, you inevitably will. So yeah, if you view your business as play, I don't really think it's possible for anybody to burn out, because business then becomes very recharging as opposed to something that's constantly draining your little HP bar in the background. All right, that is my schedule and my day and how I think about making money in a nutshell. If I could summarize this, it'd be that I care more about environment design than I do willpower. I care more about identifying bottlenecks and systematically widening those bottlenecks than doing some mindless task that may or may not actually drive my revenue. And the last thing is I care more about playing than I do necessarily working. And that's why I think I've never really burned out up until now, and I don't think that you really have to. I hope you guys appreciated this video. I had a lot of fun putting it together. If you guys have any questions about the day-to-day of myself in more detail, or maybe some other entrepreneurs, feel free to let me know down below. I'm more than happy to answer. If you guys have any requests for future videos, I'd love to hear that as well. Otherwise, like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much.